The rain-soaked streets of Chicago glistened under the streetlights. But I barely noticed as I sprinted through the downpour, my heart pounding louder than the storm. Somewhere behind me, Ethan was stumbling, his slurred shouts cutting through the night, calling my name like a prayer he didn't mean to say. I stopped, chest heaving, knowing I couldn't outrun the truth we'd both been dodging for years. My name is Javier Torres, and I've loved Ethan Caldwell since the summer we were 16. Sneaking beers behind his dad's garage in Oak Park. Back then, he'd laugh too loud, his blue eyes sparking with mischief, and I'd pretend my heart didn't race every time his shoulder brushed mine. But now, at 25, those moments felt like ghosts haunting the space between us because Ethan, with his sharp tongue and guarded heart, had spent years pushing me away, his hatred a mask I could never quite tear off. Tonight was different, though. I'd found him at O'Malley's, the dive bar where he drowned his demons in whiskey. He was already 3 drinks deep when I walked in, his broad shoulders hunched over the counter, his blonde hair falling into his eyes. The bartender, a gruff woman named Rita, gave me a knowing nod as I slid onto the stool beside him. "He's a mess tonight, Jav," she muttered, sliding me a soda. I didn't need her to tell me Ethan's red-rimmed eyes and the way he flinched when I said his name told me everything. "Get lost, Torres," he'd snarled, his voice thick with liquor and something darker. "I don't need your pity." But his hand trembled as he reached for his glass, and I saw it crack in his armor, the one he only showed when the world blurred around him. I stayed, because leaving Ethan was never an option. No matter how many times he told me he hated me. We'd been best friends once, inseparable through high school, our lives tangled in late-night talks and shared dreams of escaping our small-town roots. Ethan was the golden boy quarterback, prom king, the guy everyone loved. I was the quiet artist, always sketching in the margins of my notebooks, always watching him a little too closely. When I came out at 17, he didn't blink, just punched my shoulder and said, "Doesn't change a damn thing, Jav." But it did. Slowly, his smiles turned sharp, his words barbed. By the time we moved to Chicago for college, he'd built a wall between us, one I couldn't climb. Tonight, though, that wall was crumbling. After his 4th drink, Ethan's head dropped to the bar, and he muttered something I couldn't catch. I leaned closer, catching the scent of whiskey and the cedar cologne he'd worn since we were kids. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. He lifted his head, his eyes locking onto mine, and for a moment, I saw the boy I'd loved, not the man who pushed me away. "Why do you stay?" he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm no good for you." Before I could answer, he grabbed my hand, his grip desperate, like I was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. I froze, my heart caught in my throat. This wasn't the first time he'd done this, gotten drunk, let the truth slip, only to pretend it never happened the next day. But every time he held, Pandora held my hand, his tears falling onto our joined fingers. I felt the world shift beneath me. "Ethan," I said, my voice barely audible. "You don't mean that." He laughed, a broken sound, and leaned closer, his forehead resting against mine. "I mean it every time," he murmured, and my chest ached with the weight of his words. I wanted to kiss him, to pull him into my arms and never let go. But the bar was crowded, and the fear in his eyes held me back. Rita cleared her throat behind us. "Take him home, Jav," she said, tossing me a rag to wipe the rain from my face. He's done for the night. I nodded, helping Ethan to his feet. He swayed, leaning into me, his arms slung over my shoulders. "You're too good to me," he mumbled as we stepped into the rain. I didn't answer, because what could I say? I loved him, and he was breaking my heart. The walk to my apartment was a blur of rain and Ethan's uneven steps. By the time we got there, we were both soaked, but he didn't seem to care. I led him to the couch, grabbing a blanket to wrap around him. He was shivering, his eyes half closed, but he reached for my hand again, pulling me down beside him. "Jav," he said, his voice raw. "I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry." "For what?" I asked, though I knew the answer. I'd always known. "For being a coward," he said, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "For hating you when I don't. I never did." My breath caught, and for a moment, I thought I'd imagined it. But his eyes were steady now, even through the haze of alcohol, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Hope. I sat there, frozen, as Ethan's words hung in the air. The rain battered my apartment windows, a relentless drumbeat that matched the chaos in my chest. His hand was still wrapped around mine, his grip tight but trembling, like he was afraid I'd pull away. "You don't hate me," I repeated, testing the words, afraid they'd vanish. "Then why, Ethan? Why do you keep pushing me away?" He looked down, his jaw tight, and for a moment, I thought he'd shut down again. But then he spoke, his voice low and rough. "Because I'm scared, Jav. Scared of what it means. Scared of what people will think. My dad," he stopped, his breath hitching. "He'd kill me. He'd never understand." I knew about his dad, Robert Caldwell, the ex-Marine who ran his house like a boot camp. Ethan had spent his life trying to be the son his father wanted. Strong, stoic, perfect. Coming out wasn't just a personal risk for Ethan. It was a war he wasn't ready to fight. "I'm not asking you to tell him," I said, squeezing his hand. "I just want you to be honest with me. With yourself." He laughed, a bitter sound, and pulled his hand away, running it through his wet hair. "You make it sound so easy. Like I can just flip a switch and be okay with this." He gestured between us, his eyes flashing with frustration. "You don't get it, Jav. You're out. You're proud. You've got your family's support. I've got nothing." "That's not true," I said, my voice sharp. "You've got me." He stared at me, his expression unreadable, and for a second, I thought he'd bolt. But then he leaned forward, his hands cupping my face, and kissed me. It was sudden, messy, tasting of whiskey and rain, but it was everything I'd dreamed of. My hands found his shoulders, pulling him closer, and for a moment, the world disappeared. When he pulled back, his breathing was ragged, his eyes wide with panic. "I can't," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I can't do this." He stood, swaying slightly, and grabbed his jacket. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing. "Ethan, wait. You don't have to run from this." But he was already at the door, his back to me. "I need time, Jav," he said, his voice breaking. "Just give me time." The door slammed behind him, and I stood there, the silence deafening. I wanted to chase him, to drag him back and make him face this. But I knew Ethan. He'd run until he couldn't anymore. The next morning, I found him outside my apartment, sitting on the steps, his head in his hands. The rain had stopped, leaving the city sparkling under the dawn light. He looked up as I approached, his eyes bloodshot but clear. "I'm an idiot," he said, standing. "I shouldn't have kissed you like that." My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You regret it?" "No," he said quickly, stepping closer. "That's the problem. I don't regret it, and it's freaking me out." Couldn't help but smile, despite the ache in my chest. "Good, because I don't regret it either." He laughed, a real laugh this time, and it felt like the sun breaking through the clouds. "You're impossible, Torres." We spent the day together, something we hadn't done in years. We walked through Millennium Park, grabbed coffee at a little shop near the lake, and talked for the first time in forever. He told me about his job at the law firm, the pressure to be perfect, the fear of letting everyone down. I told him about my art, how I'd been painting him in secret for years, capturing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "You're kidding," he said, his cheeks pink. "You've got paintings of me." "Maybe," I teased, nudging his shoulder. "You'll have to come to my studio sometime." For a moment, felt like old times, like we were kids again, dreaming of the future. But the weight of his fear lingered, and I knew this wasn't the end of it. That night, we ended up at his place, a sleek apartment in the Loop that felt more like a showroom than a home. He poured us both a drink soda for me, whiskey for him, and we sat on his balcony, the city sprawling below us. The air was cool, the lights of Chicago twinkling like stars. "I want this," he said suddenly, staring at his glass. "I want you, but I don't know how to do this. Jav, I don't know how to be me." My heart ached for him, for the boy who'd been my everything and the man who was still fighting to find himself. I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers together. "You don't have to figure it out alone," I said. "I'm here. I've always been here." He looked at me, his eyes shining with something I couldn't name. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Bullshit," I said, pulling him closer. "You deserve everything." The next few weeks were a dance of hope and hesitation. Ethan and I were something undefined, caught between friendship and something more. We'd meet for coffee, steal kisses in dark corners. But every time I thought we were getting closer, he'd pull back, his fear a shadow between us. One night, at a gallery opening for a friend of mine, things changed. Ethan showed up, looking sharp in a navy suit, his hair tamed for once. I was showing a few of my paintings, including one I hadn't told him about, a portrait of him, his face soft in the morning light, his eyes full of quiet longing. "You didn't tell me about this," he said, standing in front of the painting, his voice tight. I shrugged, my cheeks warm. "Didn't want to scare you off." He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "It's beautiful, Jav. I don't look like that." "Yeah, you do," I said, stepping closer. "That's how I see you." The room was crowded, but it felt like we were alone. He took my hand, pulling me toward a quiet corner. "I'm trying," he said, his voice low. "I'm trying so hard to be brave for you." "You don't have to be brave," I said. Just be you. He kissed me then, slow and deliberate, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. The world didn't end. No one stared, and I felt something shift, a promise of something real. But the real world wasn't so kind. A week later, I got a call from Ethan's sister. Mia. Jav. You need to get to the hospital, she said, her voice shaking. It's Ethan. He's been hurt. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. Only the panic clawing at my chest. When I got there, Mia was in the waiting room, her eyes red. It was Dad, she said. Ethan told him about you, and it got bad. My knees buckled, but I forced myself to stay upright. What happened? He hit him. Jav. Broke his jaw. Ethan's okay, but he's a mess. I found Ethan in a hospital bed, his face bruised, his jaw wired shut. He looked small, fragile, nothing like the strong, confident man I knew. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears, and I climbed onto the bed, holding him as gently as I could. I'm so sorry, I whispered, my voice breaking. I should have been there. He shook his head, wincing at the movement, and reached for my hand. His grip was weak but steady, and I knew he was trying to tell me he didn't blame me. Mia filled me in later. Ethan had gone to his dad's house to come out, to tell him he was in love with me. Robert had lost it, calling him names, throwing punches. Ethan had fought back, but he didn't want to hurt his dad. He'd just taken it, hoping it would end. He loves you, Jav, Mia said, her voice soft. He's never fought for anyone like that. I stayed with Ethan that night, holding his hand as he slept. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I'd fight for him, no matter what. The weeks after the hospital were hard. Ethan moved in with me, his apartment too full of memories he couldn't face. His jaw healed slowly, and so did his heart. We spent our days talking, laughing, sometimes crying, as he worked through the pain of his father's rejection. One night, as we lay on my couch, the city lights filtering through the window, he turned to me, his eyes clear for the first time in months. I love you, Jav, he said, his voice steady. I'm done pretending I don't. My heart stopped, then raced forward. I love you too, I said, pulling him close. Always have. We kissed, slow and sure, and it felt like a vow. The world outside was still messy, still cruel, but in that moment, we were enough. Ethan started therapy, working through the years of fear and shame. I went with him sometimes, holding his hand as he spoke truths he'd buried for too long. His dad didn't come around, but Mia did, bringing her kids to visit, filling my apartment with laughter and chaos. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. One evening, we walked along Lake Michigan, the sunset painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Ethan stopped, pulling me close. I want to be better for you, he said. I want to be the man you deserve. You already are, I said, kissing him softly. You're my peace, too. We stood there, hand in hand, the waves crashing gently against the shore. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There'd be more fights, more fears, but we'd face them together. And that was enough.